And welcome back. You're watching Wisconsin Family. We are on Odana Road at Crazy Lenny's e-bikes. Now, word on the street is that you and Lenny are going to actually drag race out in the parking lot.
We are.
All right, so there's something to look forward to.
It's going to be epic.
Right now, though, we're talking wills, trust, probate, powers of attorney. Doesn't that sound kind of scary? Well, our guest is going to make it a little bit less scary and tell us why it's so important to learn about those things. Joining us right now is Johnsen Tracy. She's an attorney and co-founder of Horn & Johnsen. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
First, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do.
So my name is Johnsen Tracy, and I'm an estate planning attorney here in Madison. I live in Verona with my family. My husband, Brandon Tracy, actually owns Superhero Martial Arts. And I have a little girl, Layla, 6 years old, and I also have an older daughter who's 24. I like my kids one at a time.
So Dara, now that we know more about you, tell us more about the practice.
So Horn & Johnsen, we're a law firm located on Excelsior Drive, so right off of Odana Road on the far west side of Madison. And we are a boutique firm focusing our practice in the areas of estate planning, meaning wills, trusts, powers of attorney, also probate, so that's when somebody passes away, and adult guardianship, so if somebody becomes mentally incapacitated and we need to appoint someone to take care of them, that's adult guardianship.
Okay.
And when you say estate planning, what does that all entail?
So estate planning is a confusing term, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions surrounding what estate planning means. A lot of people say, well, I don't really have an estate, right? So I don't need an estate plan. But the reality is, if you own a home, if you have a life insurance policy, if you have a retirement account, you do have an estate, and there is some planning that's involved. And the reality is you could be worth zero and still need someone to make healthcare decisions for you if you can't make those for yourself.
Sure. I think those distinctions are so important because you don't have to be a big business owner or anything to have this be important. Can you tell us a little bit more about why it's so important?
Well, sure. So if you don't have an estate plan in place, right, and if you pass away with assets, there's a good chance that those assets would have to go through a probate proceeding if you don't plan properly, which means a court proceeding. And just as an example, I mentioned that I have an older daughter, 24 years old, Darian. I don't want some guy to be able to go online if something happens to me and see that she inherited money, right? I don't think that's safe, right? We have the circuit court access system because we have open records laws. And so there are ways to avoid that publicity if you do it the right way. Similarly, if you have minor children, you can't name those minor children as direct beneficiaries of anything, right? Because the consequences are, again, we have a court proceeding to appoint a guardian to manage those assets. The assets are locked up. And then that child gets to walk in and cash out your life insurance at the age of 18, which I assure you is in no one's best interest.
So it sounds like with estate plans, really it's important if you have relationships in your life in any way, shape or form. Parents, kids.
Sure,
yeah.
and it's not just about the assets, it's also about naming guardians for your minor children.
Okay.
That's one of the first things that families will fight about if there's an unexpected death in the family. And it's also about planning for the possibility of mental incapacity. I touched on earlier about how somebody would need to make healthcare decisions for you if you can't make those decisions for yourself. And it's always better for you to designate those people than to have a court who knows nothing, the judge doesn't know anything about your family, make that decision in the event there's an accident or, as you get older. Sure. And it's always best to put a plan in place while you're mentally competent and there's no emergency. We can plan in the event of an emergency if there's a diagnosis, but why not get a plan in place? You can have, I hate to say you can have fun with it, but you have a sense of humor about this stuff. You have to have a sense of humor about death and taxes in my profession. We can put provisions in place for your furry family members. We can take care of charities, all sorts of things we can address in your plan. But the point is you want it to be intentional, right? You don't want things to happen accidentally, and you don't want to leave a mess for your loved ones to clean up when you're gone. With estate planning, I think that the key takeaway here is it's not about you, right? You're gone or you're mentally incapacitated. It's about those who you leave behind and making sure that they're taken care of.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to get a plan in place, what's the best way for me to get started to do an estate
So the
plan?
best way to get started on an estate plan is to schedule a free initial consultation. And in that consultation, it's a chance to sit down with your estate planning attorney. Make sure you like that estate planning attorney, right? Because ideally it's going to be a long-term relationship. An estate plan is not something that you want to put in place and then never look at again, right? I have plenty of baby boomer clients who come to me, and the first question I ask is, well, what do you have in place right now? And they pull out a will from 1987, right? When they were going on vacation and the kids were minors and they needed to name guardians. That plan is probably not going to work. This many years later. So ideally you establish a relationship with your estate planning attorney, you review it every couple of years, and that free consultation is where you can address what you need, how much it's going to cost, because every family is different.
Great advice. Dara Johnsen Tracy, attorney and co-founder of Horn & Johnsen. Thank you so much for coming in today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Check them out. Take that first step. You'll feel so much better. We're at Crazy Lenny's E-Bikes. We'll be right back.